If you ever find yourself in this situation, don't do what she did. In 2006, a group of cave divers decided they wanted to film a documentary in one of the most dangerous caves in the world. But only a few hours into their descent, and a freak storm erupts on land, collapsing the entrance to the cave. In order to avoid the huge falling rocks that were coming off the ceiling, they were forced to swim through one of the uncharted sections of the cave. After they've been diving for over an hour, they luckily come across this island in the middle of a tunnel, where they set up camp and wait to be rescued. After 48 hours and no sign of a rescue, the cameraman actually starts filming in case they don't make it out of there. At the same time, one of their crew members does something very stupid. This is why you should always trust your gut. In the early 1970s, a college student decided to hitchhike his way home after class. A car pulls up, a man offers him a ride, and he climbs in. As soon as the car started moving, the student felt totally uneasy, like something was wrong but he couldn't quite place it. Without saying anything, he waited till the next time they slowed down and he flung the door open and ran away. 2 years later, he's flicking through TV channels when he comes across this special interview with a death row inmate, and it's just the audio recording, so he hears the interviewer ask the inmate, "Why did you remove all the door handles inside of your car?" The man just goes, "Well, the first time I tried to kill someone, I picked up a college hitchhiker who got smart at some point and jumped out of my car. So, lesson learned, remove all the door handles." When they showed his picture, the student knew immediately that he was supposed to be the first victim of John Wayne Gacy, aka the killer clown, who had killed over 30 men and boys in his clown room and stuffed them into his basement.
This is why you should always lock your doors. A class was playing a game of Kahoot when they heard a voice on the intercom say, "This is not a drill, go into lockdown." The students huddled in the back of the classroom and then the power went off. Minutes later, the students heard the sound of a man screaming at the top of his lungs, running down the hallway. The lunatic man started banging on the lockers and his screams gradually got louder. He then started banging on the classroom window, yelling, "Open up." He eventually left, and 10 minutes later, a voice on the intercom said a mentally ill person had entered the school and attacked the lady at the front desk. The staff did a sweep of the school and still couldn't find him, so they locked the doors and resumed class. Later that night, one of the janitors went into the utility closet when this happened. Normal looking photos that have a disturbing backstory, Part 8. This shadow is permanently etched on the steps of Hiroshima following the nuclear explosion that killed over 70,000 people. The boy in this photo is Estevan Reiner. The Nazis who took his photo made him put this uniform on, smile for the picture, and knew exactly what his fate would be. 2 weeks later, he was killed in a gas chamber. A similar story for this girl whose photo was just taken by a Nazi photographer after Germany had just invaded Poland. You can tell by her smile that she had no idea what was to come. This photo shows 3 young girls smiling together for a selfie. On the right hand side of the photo, you can see a light which is the headlight of a train which hits them moments later. While this photo appears to be just an ordinary large class photo, the 2 boys at the top left are responsible for the Columbine High School shooting, which at the time was the worst high school shooting in American history and killed 12 students and 1 teacher.
Yes, this really did happen. In 2015, a man woke up to a strange post-it note sitting on his desk. On it was a to-do list that he didn't recognize in handwriting that didn't look like his. Since he was up late the night before doing some work, he assumed he must have written out the list when he was half asleep and kind of forgot about it, so he just crumples it up and throws it away. 2 weeks later, he wakes up to dozens of these post-it notes all over his wall, and they're all blank except for one that, in the same weird handwriting, says, "Our landlord isn't letting me talk to you." Now feeling totally freaked out that some crazy person is crawling around his apartment at night, he starts looking for signs of a break-in, but there aren't any. Instead of calling the police, he shares his experience on Reddit asking for help, and one user's comment literally saves his life. Turns out the man was writing the notes to himself and then forgetting, because his brain was slowly dying due to a carbon monoxide leak that was only discovered because a user suggested he install a detector.
This has to be the worst form of torture ever. I still can't believe that this form of torture is real and is this bad. The form of torture I'm talking about is white room torture. It is basically where prisoners are isolated in white rooms, wear white clothes, and eat white food from white plates. Now you might be thinking, how could this be that bad? Well, white room torture is a form of psychological torture concerning complete isolation and sensory deprivation of the prisoners. So you see nobody else and you hear absolutely nothing except for yourself. All you get served too is white rice on a white plate. Oh, and if you need to go to the bathroom, they'll slip you a white paper under the door for you to poop on, and then you slip it right back under when you're done. This form of torture is so bad that the prisoner loses his own identity in the process. You cannot remember who you are, and you can't remember any of your family. The result of this torture is the loss of identity and forgetting everything you ever knew. You come out of this room a completely different person.
Here are some photos taken right before disaster, part 8. This is the last photo ever taken of XXXTentacion. In this photo right here, you can see him at a motorcycle shop. But just moments after this photo was taken, he went outside to get in his car to leave, and he was killed as he was being robbed. Apparently he had over $50,000 on him at the time. Rest in peace, you legend. This may look like a regular selfie of two close friends, but what happened later this night is super messed up. One of the girls, Cheyenne and Tony, allegedly strangled her friend using this very same belt that she's wearing right here. With friends like this, who needs enemies, man? Wow, so sad. This is the last photo ever taken of Christopher McCandless, aka the man from Into the Wild. His decomposed body was found by moose hunters in 1992. He apparently lived in an abandoned bus for over 100 days. His cause of death was officially ruled as starvation, but the exact cause is still debated. Pretty sad.
Creepy True Stories Part 1. Lisa Lamb was visiting the California Cecil Hotel when she strangely disappeared. Surveillance shows her coming in and out of an elevator almost as if she's scared of somebody or possessed or something, seeing a ghost, but there's nobody there. Nobody could explain this strange behavior. One day, customers of the hotel started tasting something weird in the water. When they went to check the water tanks, they found Lisa's body in it. No drugs or alcohol was found in her autopsy. And to this day, nobody knows what happened to Lisa.
This is why you should always be careful what you wish for. So in 2013, a guy actually encountered a genie, and this genie gave him one wish and only one wish. This guy was named Richard, and he wished for his wife to be back with him. But what he didn't know is the genie brought back his wife with him, but she was actually still dead and a living zombie. Follow only if you can handle scary stories. If you can't, don't follow.
This is the story about the blind woman who could see ghosts. So this girl who was blind at birth lived with her father on a single ranch house. So because she was blind at birth, she had spatial awareness. Pretty much she knew how far apart everything was based on what she touched. One day in the living room, the blind woman was talking to a ghost named Ellie. So Ellie said to the blind woman her name and asked her why her face was so messed up. So the blind woman then asked, "Why is my face messed up? What's wrong with it?" And at that point, the father then heard the conversation and snagged the blind woman out of the room and said, "Talk." The blind woman then replied, "I was speaking to Ellie," and then the father laughed. Over the course of the next few months, the blind woman started speaking to over 13 ghosts. And each time she would speak, her father would get very, very upset at her for speaking to ghosts. So one day, the blind woman fell in the kitchen and had to call the paramedics. And once the paramedics arrived there, she asked, "Can my dad come with me to the hospital?" The paramedic then replied, "Your dad's been dead for 6 years." Make sure to like for a part 2.
This is a scary story about the waiter. One night a girl went out on a blind date. Her date took her to a restaurant. Although the man was very nice, she wasn't into him at all. Halfway through the meal, she was so bored. She was already thinking of excuses so she could leave early. The waiter could tell she was bored and kept smiling and winking at her. When the girl's date was in the restroom, the waiter came over and started to ask her if she was okay. She explained she was on a blind date and that she wasn't having too much fun. It turned out the waiter was just about to get off work, and he offered to give her a ride home if she waited 10 more minutes. She considered it and was very tempted to say yes, but her date was coming back from the bathroom. She shook her head and smiled at the waiter and told him no thanks. The next night, the girl was watching the news, and they were saying a woman got murdered behind a restaurant last night. She realized it was the same restaurant she was at with her date. They then said the police already caught the killer. When the picture came up on the screen, it was the waiter who was trying to take her home.
Here's why you should never go camping without a weapon. 19-year-old Olga Moskalivyova was camping near a river in Russia with her stepfather Igor when a mother bear attacked them. Seconds later, the 500-pound brown bear broke Igor's neck and smashed his skull. Olga attempted to run, but only got about 200 feet before the bear grabbed her leg and forced her to the ground. Olga was able to make 3 calls to her mother while the bear and its 3 cubs were eating her. In the first call, Olga screamed, "Mom, the bear is eating me. It's agony. Please help." At first, the mother thought she was joking, but then she heard the horror in Olga's voice and the sounds of bears growling and chewing. The mother called the police and begged them to rush to the river, while her calls with her daughter were cut off 3 times as she could only helplessly listen to her cries for mercy. In her last call, an hour after the first, Olga said to her mother, "Mom, it's not hurting anymore. I don't feel the pain. Please forgive me for everything. I love you so much." The call then cut off, and that was the last thing Olga's mother ever heard from her.